Some situations call for a strong response, but not necessarily lethal force. It could be for home defense, personal protection, or deterring wildlife. Whatever it is, less lethal ammo options offer an alternative that can stop a threat without the immediate risk of taking a life. But how effective are these rounds? And which ones are actually worth considering? More importantly, let's clear up a common misconception before we get to the nitty-gritty. There is no such thing as non-lethal ammunition. Anything capable of causing pain compliance has the potential to be lethal under the right or wrong circumstances. A beanbag round to the chest, rubber buckshot to the throat, or even a high-dose pepper projectile in an enclosed space could cause fatal injuries. That's why these options are referred to as less lethal. They reduce the risk of killing someone, but don't eliminate it entirely. In this video, we'll break down some of the most powerful, less lethal ammo options available today. Rubber buckshot that can stop an intruder, fin-stabilized rounds designed for more controlled impact, beanbag munitions trusted by law enforcement, and even pepper-filled projectiles that can disable an attacker before they get too close. We'll go over their stopping power, limitations, and the best firearms or launchers to use them with, so you know exactly what to expect if you ever need to rely on one of these rounds in a real-world situation. Some of these options hit hard enough to knock someone to the ground. Others spread an instant chemical irritant cloud that forces attackers to retreat. But the big question is, do they really work when it matters most? Fiocchi 12-gauge rubber buckshot and slugs. Fiocchi has a long history of making quality ammunition, and its foray into less lethal 12-gauge rounds offers options for those who prefer a pump-action shotgun for defensive purposes. The rubber buckshot contains multiple rubber pellets intended to deliver enough pain to deter a threat without creating lasting damage. Its spread at close quarters can help compensate for slight aiming errors when time is critical, though performance drops off fast past about 25 yards. The rubber slug is a single piece of dense rubber that strikes with a solid thump, capable of discouraging intruders or aggressive animals. These loads can stop or dissuade someone at close range with less chance of fatal injury. Semi-automatic shotguns often have trouble cycling these rounds because the recoil is minimal, which means manual operation is the safest bet for reliability. At around $25 per box of 25, the rubber buckshot is not cheap, and the slug variety is similarly priced. The cost can add up if someone plans to train extensively, especially since these rounds may not be readily available in all locations. Their limited range and inconsistent power at longer distances makes them most practical inside a home or around a property where lethal penetration is a serious concern. They have also seen use as wildlife deterrents, warding off animals like bears without causing severe injuries. It's always good to check your local regulations to confirm that rubber loads are permitted in your area. Pump-action shotguns such as the Remington 870 or Mossberg 500 make the best host for these shells, since they can be cycled by hand. For those seeking an option with less risk of permanent harm, Fiocchi's rubber ammunition may be a worthwhile choice if the limitations are well understood and the user has trained to handle them properly. ALS 1202 Rubber Fin Rocket. ALS 1202 rubber fin rocket shells are designed for 12-gauge shotguns, usually favored by law enforcement for riot control or other scenarios calling for direct but less lethal impact. Each shell holds a single-finned rubber projectile that promises better flight stability than simpler designs. The fins are meant to keep the round on track in flight, though real-world performance sometimes yields mixed results at extended distances. Most testers agree that it remains accurate enough for torso shots at close to moderate ranges, but aiming beyond about 15 yards can lead to wide spreads. These shells can pack a serious punch for pain compliance, yet they generally avoid the lethal penetration risk of regular shot. The projectile can still cause bruising and other injuries when used improperly, so targeting large muscle groups is the safest approach. Recoil is lighter than typical buckshot, and pump-action shotguns remain the most reliable option because many semi-autos do not cycle these rounds well. Cylinder or improved cylinder barrels work best, since tighter chokes may interfere with the fin stabilization. ALS 1202 rounds are priced higher than basic rubber buckshot, sometimes running $5 to $10 per shell, and they may not be sold everywhere. Some retailers only offer them to security professionals or police departments. Anyone using them for home defense should remember that these rounds are still capable of breaking glass or damaging certain surfaces. The biggest draw is the ability to produce serious impact at close range with less likelihood of fatal injuries. That can be a good tool for those interested in a non-lethal option if they are comfortable with the cost and availability issues. Byrna Kinetic less lethal 12-gauge round. Byrna has drawn attention with a primer-powered 12-gauge round that avoids traditional gunpowder. The result is a quieter discharge and very modest recoil, which can appeal to users seeking something less intimidating than a typical shotgun shell. Each round holds a .61 caliber fin-stabilized projectile. Byrna claims an effective range up to about 100 feet, though field tests often show noticeable drop in velocity at distances beyond 15 or 20 yards. Pump-action shotguns work best since the recoil impulse may not be enough to run a semi-auto. The design promises reduced risk of lethal penetration, but a center mass or large muscle impact can still produce intense pain compliance. This approach can help deter an intruder without the aftermath that comes with a deadly force encounter, provided the user understands the limitations of reduced velocity. The noise level is around 115 decibels, which is quieter than most standard shotgun rounds. That can be useful in situations where drawing less attention or preserving hearing is important. Pricing often runs around $35 to $40 for a 5-pack, which is high compared to common rubber buckshot. However, the distinct advantage is that the round relies solely on a primer for propulsion, allowing easier follow-up shots without intimidating recoil. It is a niche solution for anyone seeking a less lethal approach that still has some stinging authority. Proper shot placement and realistic expectations are key, because a determined attacker might not be subdued as quickly as with the standard buckshot load. Those who prefer a more measured approach may appreciate the peace of mind offered by non-lethal shells that keep property damage and medical risk lower. Umarex T4E 50 caliber pepper rounds. Umarex T4E pepper rounds take a different approach by using a chemical irritant instead of a heavy impact. Each 50 caliber projectile holds a potent pepper compound that can spread in a fine mist on impact, irritating an attacker's eyes and respiratory system. They are typically fired through specialized paintball-style markers, such as the T4E HDP-50 or similar CO2-based launchers, so they do not require a standard firearm. Ease of use is a major benefit for folks who want less training than firearms demand. These rounds can still hurt if someone is hit directly, and thick clothing might keep the ball from breaking consistently. They work best when they burst on a hard surface near the target, sending pepper powder into the air. Wind can reduce effectiveness or blow the irritant back at the user, so environmental awareness is essential. Many states treat these rounds similarly to other chemical sprays, allowing civilian ownership, but restrictions exist in places like California and New York. Pepper-based options focus on creating confusion and discomfort rather than deep tissue trauma, so they are more appropriate where the goal is a swift escape. Each box of 10 usually runs around $35 to $40, making it fairly affordable. The T4E pepper round is a solid choice for someone wanting a method to repel threats without lethal force, though it lacks the stopping power associated with heavier projectiles. It is worth practicing in similar conditions with inert powder rounds, so the user is prepared for how they fly and burst. Defense Technology Drag Stabilized 12-gauge beanbag round. Defense Technology's drag stabilized beanbag round is widely trusted by law enforcement. It launches a small fabric sack filled with fine shot that flattens on impact, creating a strong sting while typically avoiding lethal outcomes. The key advantage is a set of stabilizing tails that help keep the beanbag from tumbling, so shot placement is more predictable within its effective range of about 20 to 75 feet. A pump-action shotgun is generally the best platform, and the user is advised to aim at large muscle groups to reduce the chance of severe injury. These rounds often run between $6 and $10 each and are designed with crowd control and suspect apprehension in mind. Though some individuals use them in private settings, they still demand caution. A shot at the head or chest can cause serious harm. Training is vital since the idea is to gain compliance by hitting areas like the thighs or abdomen. A big plus is that the tail-stabilized design helps with consistency, so there is less risk of the projectile veering off or ripping open. Higher accuracy means fewer unplanned injuries, yet there is always the possibility of multiple shots if a person is highly motivated or impaired. Beanbag rounds are not always easy to buy as a civilian, depending on local regulations. They remain a tried and true choice for those who want an intermediate force option with recognized effectiveness and a long history of use by professionals. PepperBall VXR LIVE-X projectile. These VXR LIVE-X projectiles by PepperBall use a concentrated pepper compound designed to overwhelm an aggressor's senses. The .68 caliber round has a spin-stabilized design intended for maximum accuracy from compatible launchers, including PepperBall's VKS or TCP models. The shell can hold a stronger dose of pepper irritant than standard PepperBall rounds. When it ruptures, the airborne irritant can cause eye, nose, and throat discomfort, buying time for defensive maneuvers or escape. These rounds are sometimes used in riot control or large-scale security because they can affect multiple individuals when they burst on walls, pavement, or other surfaces. At velocities ranging from 280 to 425 feet per second, they also deliver a noticeable kinetic strike, though the main deterrent is the chemical cloud. The range can go up to 150 feet, which beats most handheld pepper sprays. A downside is the price, as a box of 10 can cost well over $200. Some extremely determined attackers may not respond as quickly to chemical irritants. Windy conditions or open spaces can disperse the pepper cloud, and blowback can affect the shooter. Still, the ability to engage targets from a distance with a strong irritant is significant. These rounds are not classified as traditional firearm ammo, so there are fewer restrictions in many areas, though local laws vary. They remain an option for those who want a powerful pepper round that extends well beyond the reach of a handheld spray. Defense technology, Exact Impact Sponge Rounds. The Exact Impact Sponge Rounds from Defense Technology is a 40mm direct fire option that is proven effective for riot control and other tactical uses. It relies on a spin-stabilized, foam-tipped projectile that reduces the likelihood of serious injury while retaining the force necessary to discourage violent behavior. The round generally travels at 345 feet per second and can be used effectively out to around 131 feet. It fits 40mm launchers that have rifled barrels, which helps stabilize the sponge projectile in flight. Law enforcement personnel often turn to sponge rounds when they want to step above simple pepper spray, but do not want to resort to lethal force. Targeting large muscle areas like thighs or buttocks is usually advised to hitting more vulnerable spots. One reason these rounds see widespread use is that they tend to maintain a predictable flight path. A well-aimed shot usually lands close to point of aim. There is still a risk of serious injury if the shot hits a critical area, and users must be mindful of minimum distances, typically around 5 feet. Civilian access is quite limited, in part because 40mm launchers are not commonly available to the general public. Each round can cost around $25 to $40, which adds up quickly for regular training sessions. They do, however, offer a range advantage over most 12-gauge, less lethal munitions and can deliver more precise shots. That combination of accuracy and less lethal energy has made them a mainstay for tactical teams. CTS Super Sock Beanbag Rounds. Combined Systems developed the 12-gauge Super Sock for quick deployment in corrections, law enforcement, or military settings. The beanbag inside the shell deploys as soon as it leaves the barrel, which removes the requirement for a certain distance before the bag fully opens. That feature is valuable in close quarters, where officers may need to act rapidly against a non-compliant subject. A pump-action shotgun with an 18-inch cylinder bore barrel is typically recommended. The Super Sock is loaded with a 40-gram shot-filled pouch that retains decent stability in flight. Its velocity of about 280 feet per second allows accuracy out to 75 feet, though it is most effective in shorter engagements. The impact is powerful enough to deter or incapacitate, but the flattened pouch usually reduces the chance of life-threatening injuries when aimed correctly. As with any beanbag round, there is still potential for serious harm if someone is struck in the head, neck, or other vulnerable area. These rounds are often sold only to agencies or professionals, so the average civilian may not be able to obtain them. Each round can cost $6 to $10, and shipping restrictions sometimes apply because they are categorized under certain hazardous materials guidelines. Despite those hurdles, the Super Sock is respected among tactical users for its ability to function right out of the barrel. It is a dependable choice for situations that demand an immediate, less lethal response without waiting for the beanbag to stabilize. Proper training and consistent target discipline remain crucial, since beanbag rounds can still inflict serious damage if used recklessly. And that's going to do it for today. Less lethal ammo isn't a perfect substitute for traditional self-defense rounds, but it has its place. We've covered rubber buckshot, fin-stabilized rockets, beanbag rounds, and pepper-based projectiles, each with its own advantages and drawbacks. Personally, I'd take a firearm over any of these less lethal options any day. But if owning one isn't an option for you, or you just want to stop a threat without turning it deadly, these less lethal rounds might be worth checking out. So which of these less lethal ammo options caught your interest the most? Drop a comment below. Share your thoughts. Maybe you've got some insights to add. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to hit like, share, and subscribe. And of course, click that bell icon too so you don't miss what's coming next. Thanks for watching.